everyone, and welcome to another episode of Looking for Love in All the Wrong Dust Jackets, a show where three cool ladies talk to you about anything that we love in romance, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, whatever we like. My name's Liz.
I'm Danny.
I'm Wiggles.
And today we're talking about a classic, straight at you from the 90s, Grumpy Old Men.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, we got to warn ya that we are crass bitches. We'll swear, we'll talk about sex, all that stuff. So if you don't like it, toodaloo.
Goodbye forever.
Toodles. But before we talk about one of my favorite movies, I gotta know what you guys have been up to lately. What have you been doing the last week?
You go, Wiggs.
Oh, good. I'm so ready. I had this planned and pulled up. I did not have stuff for the episode later on pulled up instead, and I'm not riffing right now at all. I have it ready. I know who I just read this book about and who it was by. Okay, I've got it. All right. So, this week I read Waiting for Tom Hanks by Carrie Winfrey. It was a good 3.5 read. It was solid. The main character is kind of hard to like, but other than that, it's really funny. If you have watched a ton of rom-coms, the references are just through the roof. I mean, this is also written in a way that I think it would make a way better movie than a book.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think that's also part of why it's only a 3.5 for me. But it's really funny, especially if you are familiar with the Nora Ephron canon, which eventually I'm going to be getting y'all caught up with You've Got Mail. I would recommend this if you don't want to think too much, but you do want to feel that rom-com joy. So go for it.
I'm telling you now, Angela has been trying for years to make me watch You Got Mail.
And now I'm forcing you.
Oh,
I'll
welcome,
text
Angela.
her and let her know that you're supposed to watch it as a homework assignment.
Yeah.
She's literally been trying to bargain that she'll watch this with me if I watch You Got Mail.
I need this woman's phone number because I need to text her and be like, guess what?
I don't think any of you have it, and I will not share.
You fool. I do have it.
Angela,
God
if
damn
you're
it.
listening to this
I'm sure
podcast, my number is 555.
She does listen to the podcast.
55555. No, but for real, text me.
God damn it. Okay. So, not gonna lie, it was my birthday weekend.
Woohoo!
I slept in a treehouse for 4 days.
4 days.
Yes.
That's a lot.
I had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So I lived in Angela's treehouse, which is my house. Even the keys are labeled Danny's house.
If I hadn't actually been to your apartment, I would be like, Danny, is this a cry for help?
Nope. It's not a cry for help. I have actually a very large apartment.
You do, and I'm angry about it if I'm being so honest.
But I did sleep in a treehouse with a wood-burning stove, and so I did not do a lot of things involving anything. I kind of ignored the world. I did listen to several audiobooks. I listened to the entirety of the audiobook for The Green Mile, and I listened to the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. But
Just laying on the floor of the treehouse?
laying on the bed in the treehouse. There's also a couch in there and a mini fridge.
Liz?
This is actually a weird week. I don't have anything.
Dun, dun,
I know.
dun!
Well, I'm in the middle of an audiobook and a physical book, and I was going to finish the physical book last night, but then my sister texted me and said, hey, bitch. She didn't say the bitch part, but hey, do you want to drink White Claws and watch Buffy all night? And so the choice had to be.
You didn't invite me? The offense.
I'm sorry.
No. It's fine.
This is her
I
offended
just know
face.
where we
Is this
stand
not her
now.
offended face? I mean,
so
I'm
this
a
is
little
how
offended.
The
You
podcast
bitches
is breaking up now with artistic differences.
I mean, I'm sorry, okay?
I mean, I'm a
I don't
little
think you
offended.
are.
You guys keep trying to get me to watch Buffy.
she was already on the 3rd episode because she was rewatching.
I don't give a shit.
No, you're fine.
I will watch every episode.
We could be in the middle of the 5th season and be like, bitch, this where we is.
Yes,
Here's your White Claw, sit your ass down.
exactly. So the excuse is what?
Oh, Lord. I'll make it up to you, I promise.
We are apparently
Mm-hmm.
very much
You're gonna have
into
to.
Okay.
white girl spoopy season, though, because White Claws and watching Buffy sounds very white girl spoopy season.
Well,
That's literally what my sister called it. She's like, "Do you want to have a sad, spoopy girl night tonight?" And I was like, "Okay."
Needs more pumpkin spice to be a real white girl.
I mean, the White
Spoopy
Claws,
season.
though. So when we're talking about like drinking, it's the White Claws.
If I didn't know you and know that you drink them, I would ask the question, who actually drinks those, though? Are they a front for drugs? Because they're nasty.
My sister drinks them more than I do, but I don't mind White Claws.
I don't really like them.
I'm sorry, I can't do it. It's like, it's a hard
It's
pass.
fine.
Like, they're fine.
I also made us grilled cheeses, and we had butternut squash soup, so we were very white girl. Don't murder me.
I really like me some grilled cheeses, too. God damn it.
I would like to state for the record that if Liz goes missing, I did not murder her.
Same. And you
Anyway.
can believe it because it's on a recording.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's why I didn't finish the book. Priorities.
We are going to have words with your sister now.
Yeah, yeah.
How come
Well,
we don't get to play White Claws and Buffy?
I'm sorry.
All right, well, moving on from that, our grudge is about to be on par with our main characters today.
What the hell of a transition was that?
That was me doing whatever the fuck I want. You don't get to critique me now, ma'am. Putz.
Moron.
Anywho, so Liz has made the claim that this is one of her favorite movies. This is also one of my favorite movies. It is a family classic. So before we dive in to some of the plot, I'm going to give you a few fun facts about this movie because, fun facts are fun. First of all, Walter Matthau almost fucking died making this movie.
True
He
statement.
got pneumonia being in the Minnesota winter. And the corresponding fun fact with that is that he is quoted as saying the only reason he agreed to do this movie was because he needed to pay off his gambling debts. And he, after the experience, said, I should have asked for more money.
That was because of the nudity scene, the naked scene. Well, it's not nudity, but he is naked in a bathtub. That's
true.
the joke. He's like, if I knew there was going to be nudity in it, I would have asked for more money.
It's true. It's true. Also, Burgess Meredith, who you probably know as Pop, he was actually cast as much older than he was. He was playing a 94-year-old in the first movie and was only 85.
Mm-hmm.
He also was struggling a little bit with Alzheimer's and had to be coached through some of his scenes, which you can see a little bit, but he still delivers, man.
He's so good.
Yeah, he does.
Delivers. It's hilarious. And he was actually only 17 years older than his supposed son, Jack Lemmon. So there you go. Also, a little what if is that this movie was originally supposed to be for Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis.
Correct.
So, there are many more fun facts if you go and look for them, but that's not what this podcast is. So you need to go find a movie podcast if you want that. But yeah. Who would like to tell us the plot of this movie?
I can, because I never do.
Yay!
Yay!
And Danny probably would like a break from always having to do this segment or share this segment with Wiggles. Okay, so Grumpy Old Men, which is straight up one of my top 3 movies of all time. It's great and fantastic and also just has a lot of nostalgia for me, is about 2 grumpy old men in Wabasha, Minnesota, who've had a lifelong feud but are also neighbors. So life. And they're just living their life ice fishing in the middle of winter when a hot young thing, young is like 50, she looks like 50s.
She is young. She's 20 years younger than they are.
In the movie?
In life. I don't know about in the movie.
Oh.
She
okay.
might have been playing older, but yeah.
Okay. Ariel moves in next door, and Ariel is a bit of a free spirit, and she causes a lot of commotion. She likes to ride her snowmobile in the middle of the night and all that jazz. So the 2 old men are kind of fighting with each other over the opportunity to hang out with Ariel and court her, because their feud all started back when John, who's played by Jack Lemmon, stole, quote unquote, Max Goldman, John Gustus and Max Goldman, his girl away or whatever. We don't really know how that went. So the movie progresses through them bickering and fighting over Ariel, and Eventually, John starts actually having a real romantic relationship with her, but cuts it off to like give Max the opportunity. And then John gets really sad. And then he eventually has a heart attack, which is very sad. And that's when Max goes, okay, you can have her. That's like the highest and quickest way I can get through the plot of this movie.
That is the trajectory, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you hit the high points. So, what do we want to talk about first?
I want to talk about, so this movie is technically classified as a rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a rom-com?
I 100% think it's a rom-com. I think it's marketed as a buddy comedy.
Yeah.
Right? And it hits those points too. But I think it's especially marketed that way because of the actors Jack Lemmon and
Walter
Matthau. For some reason, I was just like, Matthau. That's the only name he gets to have. And that's because if you don't know, these two are the original Odd Couple.
Yeah.
They are the Odd Couple, right? They were actually in 10 movies together.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few more extra fun facts.
They'll just keep coming, don't you worry.
They'll just keep coming. But yeah, I think that's what they marketed as is this like, what if it was that, but they're older now? So yeah.
I think the thing that determines whether it's a rom-com for me is the plot driven by the romance? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and you could tell their story without introducing somebody like Ariel, but there needs to be a catalyst for change, right?
Right.
And she is that. In my opinion, Ariel is the original Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Oh, for sure. That
Like,
is what she
the
is.
model for that.
Ariel is absolutely like the Manic Pixie Dream Girl of before there were Manic Pixie Dream Girls, because she's a professor of classic literature or some type of literature.
Well, somehow this bitch has managed to, previously she says that she was teaching expressionism.
Yeah.
But now she's suddenly teaching English classics at the college level. And I was like, that doesn't happen.
No.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
I was like, you must be a Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
And she has money coming out of her ass, too, because that house is big.
I think some of that must be inheritance from her husband's death.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Because, like, she has a fairly large house. Now, I'm granted, this is the 90s and in Minnesota. So...
And small town
Minnesota. So that either translates to it's really fucking expensive because it's small town, or it's really not. There is no in between.
Right. And the other thing to keep in mind, because it's the 90s, right, is that could you probably buy a house on your own on a professor's salary back then? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you could. But she's got a very nice snowmobile.
Mm-hmm.
And then is that a sauna or a hot tub?
It looks like a sauna.
I think it's a sauna.
Well, I think too the reason I also think that it must be that she's like living on inheritance money is like they make a comment of her having moved around all over the place over the last bit. And so I think the story that they're trying to tell us with the way she treats money is that she's decided she's going to live life to the fullest because she lost her husband. Right?
Yeah.
And you never know when it's going to be your last day.
Yeah. She's from California, correct? Or at least that's where she came
was
from.
teaching at Berkeley, so at least she's been there for a while.
Yeah.
Which that could be another thing too, because like she's not old enough to probably be retired, but I mean, if you were teaching at Berkeley and then you moved to Minnesota, you have California money in Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you're talking to three girls from the Midwest. It's a thing.
Yeah,
it's for sure a thing.
Very different. Yeah.
Also, and it's a weird thing that stuck out to me, but this is the 90s, and she got tea tree oil sent to her in the fucking 90s. That was not a thing.
Oh, she's given strong art teacher energy throughout this entire thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was just like, God damn.
Like, I don't know why the tea tree oil stuck out to me, but I was like, she's getting essential oils. It's the 90s.
Well, that's why she had to have it like shipped in at the pharmacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love her. There are things about her that I want to be. Like, girl's got sweater game down.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, my God.
Her fucking, like, wrap things. I'm like, I would wear that now.
I would wear all that. I would wear her entire wardrobe. But, like, also, she's very bold, you know? Mm-hmm. She just, like, walks into people's houses, and they're like, ma'am?
To look at their bathrooms.
Yes.
Which is a weird obsession, but whatever, I guess.
Oh, I get it. As somebody who maybe and should not, but certainly does like to open people's medicine cabinets to see what they have.
As somebody
get
who's
it.
a graded snoop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I know where the medicines are in your bathroom, but it's usually because I'm like, can I have this?
It's not hard. You just open a drawer and then there's medicine.
I actually don't snoop that much. I think it's mostly because people just tell me shit, so I don't really need to like poke around. It'll come out eventually.
I don't do this anymore, but I used to have a fascination with going through people's purses. So if I was like with my mom and she set her purse down, I would immediately pick it up and just start going through it. I don't know.
Okay, Harriet the Spy.
Right? Jeez.
I don't know.
Oh man,
I do it whenever I come over to your house too. I like look around like, oh, what's this?
I know you
What's
do.
this? What's this?
I'm genuinely like, I gotta hide all the good shit.
Now I'm terrified what you do when you cat sit for me.
Same thing.
Yeah, poke around my back. I mean, I got nothing.
Mm. Well, I also, to me, there's no more manic pixie dream girl moment than when she's like, oh yeah, I stole some of your mail. And they're like, that's weird, but okay, because you're cute.
Right.
Like, that's strong manic pixie energy.
Well, when she first does it to John, it's like, okay, that's actually believable that the mail got delivered to the wrong house. And then she immediately does it to Max. And John's like, wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
It is less believable considering that they are in a small town and John and Max have lived there like pretty much their entire lives. Like the mailman's not gonna mess that up often, if at all. He probably knows them.
I think those two have been living next door to each other their whole fucking lives.
Yes.
That's how I read this whole movie, is that basically they were like, I hate you so much. Now move into that house over there. I can get you a good deal on it. Right?
I mean, I definitely said it earlier. He calls him putz, but that's his putz. Nobody else gets to fuck with that putz.
Right.
Well, that's the whole plot, because the one thing I didn't mention in the plot was the IRS thing. And that's the whole thing there is Max just being like, whoa, you can't fuck with him. I fuck with him, but you get the fuck out of here.
I love when he like turns his evil ire on to the IRS man. He's like, oh, guess what, motherfucker? I got time.
I'm retired, bitch.
I'm like, I got literally nothing better to do. And that's what I aspire to.
I mean, that is the dream someday. To be like, I've got nothing to do but fuck with your ass because you fucked with my bitches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the subplot number 1 of what is like 5 subplots, is that John apparently fucked up his taxes for a long period of time because his ex-wife was working part-time, but he was claiming she wasn't working. And so the IRS are like, you owe us $50,000 and we're going to repossess your house.
Yep.
And
that's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money anyway, but it's a lot of money in the 90s.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's scary money in the 90s.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what that conversion is to, but I would say at least double it.
At least,
At
yeah.
least, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely like your house money back then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even want to talk about the housing market, to be totally honest. So I'm going to like push us beyond that because then I'll get angry.
I know.
Same.
I know.
Same.
So I guess I want to talk a little bit because I feel like we'll like leave it in the dust because we'll be talking about other things that we really like. I want to talk a little bit about the kids of John and Max and their like cute little situation they got going on.
Oh, yeah. Subplot number 3. Number 2.
Yeah. I would like to talk about subplot number 2. Thank you. So technically, she's just separated from her husband. Mel is her name. And her husband is played by that, the bad guy in like every 90s movie for forever. He's a bad guy in Happy Gilmore.
He plays Shooter McGavin in
Shooter
Happy Gilmore.
McGavin.
He's just a smarmy looking asshole. I'm sure he's a delightful human being. I really am. Because he always plays the funniest characters, even though they're always the asshole.
Christopher McDonald.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's just like made an entire career of himself out of being like the douche. He's also the douche in Flubber.
He is the douche and flubber.
Sorry, I'm just like looking at some of his like notable things. I was just like, are you the good guy in any of these? He's Tappy Tibbins in Requiem for a Dream. He plays Ward Cleaver in Leave It to Beaver. Anyway, the point is, not. He has a fabulous career that I'm sure has paid him very well, being the guy that everyone's like, oh, that guy.
Right.
Yeah.
He's one of those people that walks on screen and immediately you're like, that fucking asshole's back.
Oh, that him?
And I, you know what? I would love to see him do more. Do it more.
He's very
can't
good.
age out of that face. Let's see it more.
He's not in this movie very much. It's a very small part.
But his character is implied to a lot before we ever get to meet him.
Yes.
And him and his wife their relationship's on the rocks and they're separating. And so she's spending a lot more time at her dad's and runs into kind of what sounds like a high school crush, but like neither one of them wanted to acknowledge it. Kind of thing.
It seems pretty obvious that Jacob definitely had a crush on her.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And very clearly still does.
Well, I mean, it's not explicit, but my understanding of the situation is that Jacob was definitely like a nerd.
Yeah.
And she was definitely a popular hottie. I mean, she's Daryl Hannah, so
yeah, it's true.
There's no way she wasn't a popular hottie. And I think that she probably was like, it wouldn't be cool for me to date the kid next door.
Right.
But at the same time, when he mentions that he used to like stare through her window, which by the way, creepy.
Yes.
She pretty much implies that like she left the curtains slightly open on purpose.
Yes.
To let him stare through the window.
Well, I love the way that gets phrased too, because she's like, "Why do you think I was constantly staring through your window?" And she's like, "Why do you think that the window was open just enough?" And he was like, "I thought I was lucky." She's like, "Bitch, no, come on." But yeah, I think they're really cute. And so while we're spending all this time paying attention to John and Max and Ariel and their whole situation, in the background, those two are totally falling in love with each other. And it's so cute.
The broccoli mistletoe cracks me up.
Yes.
It's adorable.
Yes.
And he is running for mayor.
He is running for mayor.
So this is a random thing, but one of the things I love about this movie is that basically every scene counts.
Mm-hmm.
Like every scene has a point, and the reason I'm thinking about that is Jacob comes up a lot, partially to like work with Mel to get the dads to get along, but also because he's running for mayor. So when he eventually becomes mayor, he can then get the cease and desist order on the IRS to save John's house. And it's just like every single scene has a point in the plot.
Yes. Why did we ever get rid of that?
I know.
Can we bring it back, movie makers?
There's also some really lovely moments because it shows that as much as Max and John fight, it has never been that they don't like each other's children. It's not even necessarily that they don't like each other. They fight constantly. But like the instant that John sees Jacob, because he's bringing around signs and everything that, vote for me to be mayor, blah, blah, blah. And he walks up and you would think that if they fought this much all through their lives, that he maybe wouldn't like his son either. But his instant response is, "Oh, hi, Jakey."
Well, he spends the whole movie trying to get Jacob to actually finally ask Mel out.
Oh, yeah.
See, and that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about Jake and Mel. Because one of the funniest scenes that happens early on, because a lot of the beginning is build up. There's definitely humor there, but it's a big lead into a lot of like payoff and jokes later. Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is when John is like spying on Ariel and is like, "This woman is insane. She keeps odd hours. She does these weird things." And Jake's like, "You're paying a lot of attention there, John."
The squirrels. It's the squirrels.
It's the squirrels, right? And then just the delivery of it, I was like, they must have either, like, I don't know the history of either of these actors, like, before they became famous actors, but, like, either they are from the Midwest or they spent some time around people from the Midwest, because the delivery was so fucking Midwest. He transitions very, like, abruptly to, "So, by the way, Mel and her husband are, they're separating."
Yeah. But then the one thing he won't say, which is also very Midwest, is, "Why don't you just ask Mel out?"
Yeah.
Like, why don't you come by around this time after at Christmas or something? And because Mel will be here.
We have a very roundabout way to do things. It's
Yes.
very Midwest.
Yes.
It's why there is a thing called a Midwest goodbye. And it is, anybody from the Midwest, you are well aware, you don't get to just say, "Okay, bye," and leave. That's not how it works.
No, that's offensive.
You then have another 10-minute conversation and then kind of mention that you're leaving again. And then you get to have another like 10 to 20-minute conversation. And then maybe in that process, you get to put a coat on and maybe pick up a few things to go out the door. It takes a very long time to leave in the Midwest.
Well, and they do that side conversation so perfectly because that's a street conversation is what I like to call them. I always thought it was hilarious that my mom and the neighbor would both end up on either side of the street at the end of their driveways chatting with each other. And I was like, that's Midwest to me.
It is.
Yeah.
And so the street conversations are perfect. And so when he the way he ends it too is he's just like, goes back to talking about Ariel and he's like, I haven't had sex in 15 years.
Oh my God.
And just like pats him on the shoulder and goes inside. And I was like, that is so just the way you like throw out the thing that like is gonna haunt somebody.
Yep.
The rest of the day they're gonna be thinking about that shit. And it's like, God, why do we do that?
Because we're from the Midwest.
I don't know, it's one of my favorites.
Okay, Wiggles, what's subplot number 3?
Subplot number 3 is Chuck.
That was gonna be my subplot number 3 too.
I fucking love Chuck.
Fucking love Chuck. Honestly, I'm heartbroken every time.
I know.
I wish we had more time with him. But like that's the whole point, right? Is live for today because you don't know what the fuck is left.
Well, that's like a whole theme of this movie.
Yeah. I love Chuck too because he's just like, you two are idiots. We've been friends for God knows how long. You two are idiots. I'm going to the lady. He's just like, shut the fuck up. Ma'am, I think you're hot.
Chuck is great because as a side character who's really in like a handful of scenes, his character's impact on the overall story is huge.
Yes, it is.
So we have Chuck basically telling them, you're a bunch of idiots, and then if you ain't gonna go after it, I'm gonna. And he describes his like night with Ariel as this like transcendent experience.
Yes.
We never know what happens. We know they don't have sex, but we never know what happens.
I think it's best that we don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't
That's
need
between
to
Chuck
know.
and Ariel.
It's between Chuck and Ariel.
I also gotta say, like, of all the choices, let's be so honest, Chuck is the hot one of those three.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Like,
Jack Lemmon's still pretty attractive.
he's all right, but he don't dress
No.
in a way that's like, hello,
He
sir.
dresses like a man in his 60s in the Midwest. And it doesn't matter what decade.
It's true. Yeah.
Oh, God, it's so true.
There was a big nostalgia factor for me the second the movie started. I'm like, that is small town Minnesota in the winter. That is for sure what that is.
Yep.
It could also be small town South Dakota in the winter because, yep.
I also gotta say, and this is sort of like a complete tangent from what the fuck we're talking about, but I have always been in love. Like, as a child, didn't know this is what I was feeling, but I've always been in love with Walter Matthau's voice.
He has a very strange, it's like, there are certain consonants that he doesn't overpronounce. It's not a lisp, but he just kind of like soft pronounces certain consonants. And it is very soothing.
It is.
Yes, and he also has a very
why.
distinct voice.
Yes.
So like his manner of speaking, you're correct. He does kind of soft pronounce some consonants, and then he just has a very distinct voice and vocal pattern. And yeah, I find it very soothing.
Yeah.
Well, he also was the neighbor in Dennis the Menace.
I literally was about to go there. Do you have any idea
And
how
that
mind
is-
melty we are right now?
That is such a nostalgia thing for me because that was my jam as a
Mr.
kid.
Wilson!
I also love how he says VFW because I'm just like, that's not the most like going down to
Down
the
at the
VFW.
How is the turkey at the VFW?
Oh, man.
When they're trying to get it out of him that he went to, like, they saw you clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. He also has like a little bit of a whistle on certain words. I don't know if you catch that, but there's like some airs like passing through his teeth that like whistles as he talks sometimes. Again, it's just very melodic and soothing.
Well, so before we started recording, you mentioned that like you prefer the first one to the second one. And I think that maybe the reason I love the second one even more is because you get more of Max in that one.
Well, it's his love story.
It's
in the
his
second
love story, right? And I literally could watch him say the like Maria There may be plenty of fish in the sea, but you're the only one I want to stuff and mount over my fireplace. And I love it. It's one of my favorite things.
I also love in the second one, which is not what we're talking about, but I just love the way he goes, "Nyang!" every time he's talking to her.
Or fucking Ristorante Beat Shoppe. Sorry, we're leaving Danny out on this one. Somehow she's managed to not see the second one.
I think I have seen it. I don't know. This was one of those movies that going over to like my grandparents' house growing up, these were on a lot because my grandpa thought Grumpy Old Man was the bomb.com.
So did every Midwestern man.
Yes.
Well, and I think there was also some ownership by like Midwestern people that, hey, this movie was made in Minnesota.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was ours.
There is also a nostalgia factor to the squirrels thing for me because my grandpa was obsessed with squirrels. There was an incredibly fat squirrel that lived on my grandparents' property because grandpa fed him constantly to the point where this fucking squirrel, my dad was in the garage with my grandpa one day and this squirrel just comes into the garage and goes into the can where the food was and starts to help himself. And my dad, who was a full-grown adult, like I was alive at this point, was like, "Dad, what is..." And he goes, "Oh, no, it's fine. He just helps himself." Like, what the hell?
Oh my god.
So the squirrels thing makes me... It's just a little like... Oh.
Well, she's got the squirrels on her roof.
It's the squirrels. Look at the squirrels on her roof.
So while we're talking about Max, can I say that one of the things that I love about this movie, because John and Ariel end up together at the end, is I think they did a good job of portraying that Max and Ariel don't really fit as a couple. But like, obviously Max is, he says that at one point, he's just too old to wait for somebody who like...
Who's perfect.
Yeah. But they do a good job of then comparing the fact that like John and Ariel do make a lot more sense together. So it's not just like, oh, whoever ends up quote unquote winning or picking the girl or like gets the prize. It's like, no, these two actually make sense. And Ariel even says throughout the entire movie that she's just friends with Max, even though Max doesn't think that.
Yeah, she says Max is my friend.
Yeah.
Well, I think in Max's head, he's like, with enough suave debonair, I can win her over. And it's like, you'd have to have that first, sir.
Well, their one dinner at her house together that we do see, it's very awkward and like they don't really have a lot to talk about or have a lot of interests in common, which is the very opposite of her and John, who are like, he is an old high school history teacher, so they do have a lot in common. They play chess together. They're very cute, honestly.
They make snow angels.
They make snow angels.
Yes. Well, and you can see what Chuck is talking about when he says it's like being young again. That bringing that love into your life just livens everything up again.
It's infectious too. When somebody's excited to be doing something or out in the world or whatever, you know, it is a little infectious at times.
Especially for two old fogies who have a pretty set routine of just like, we get up and we go ice fishing and that's what we do.
I love the ice shanties so much. The like shanty town on the lake.
Yes.
It's such a Minnesota thing.
I love that there's somebody whose entire job is to have a cart of basic necessities and half of them are beer and cigarettes.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously.
You can make a killing doing that.
Oh my God, right?
For sure. Did you know, another fun fact, that the address that is on Pop Pop Shack, because they have addresses on their shanties, is actually the address of the real Slippery's Bar in Wabasha, Minnesota.
Good to know.
Good to know.
Which is coming in hot with a fun fact.
I got one of them.
I gotta give up so much love for Pop Pop.
He is just, every time he's on screen, you just laugh.
No one else matters.
Right.
This actually aged fairly well. Like, there's not a lot that you're like, eeh. And I mean, because the only things are Pop Pop makes some horrible references to sexual stuff.
You gotta mount her, son.
Yes, you gotta mount her, son. But they're
supposed
to be horrible. Like, it creeps John out.
Yes.
Like, they're supposed to be, oh my God, what the fuck did you just say?
Right. It's not seen as like, oh, this is like
This is
what cool
acceptable.
people
No,
do.
it's
It's
not
like,
acceptable in the
no,
90s
my dad
either.
is completely out of line all the time, and he embarrasses the shit out of me. That's another thing that I love about the second movie, maybe just a titch more, is you get more of him as well. And God, the things that they got this guy to say, they were just like, what if...
Got him to say it? I swear, most of those had to have come from him.
He was having the best time.
Yeah. What is the one that actually makes it in the movie is Chuck is taking the one-eyed snake to the optometrist or something like that.
Yes.
Pop, pop.
I love too, in the credits when they're doing all the bloopers, he has a different reaction for each one.
I know.
Right? Like, he's like, oh. or what is the one where he ends it with meow?
I don't remember, but it's funny.
They're all amazing, but my personal favorite, and I wish it was the one in the movie because I think it's the funniest, is the one where he's like, looks like Chuck sticking the old log to the beaver.
Well, what's really fun about this is that both John and Max have a lot of insane one-liners too.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, John has also some really interesting dirty jokes. The one that I wrote down this time, because this time is, I've laid more pipe in this town than Wabasha plumbing.
Yes.
They're arguing about who's gotten more.
Yes. I feel like that's
Jesus Christ.
the first, oh geez, really out there thing that's said in the movie, in the spans of the movie. It's the first time that something like that comes out, and it's been a really long time since I've seen this movie. And so all of a sudden he said it and I was like, what am I watching?
Oh yeah, watching it as an
forgot.
adult is a different experience than watching it as a kid.
They do a really good job of making it so it goes over your head as a kid, and as an adult you're like, sir.
Also,
This is the first time I've watched this as an adult.
It's a different movie.
It's a different movie.
Yeah.
When
It's
you
a
guys
better
said
movie.
said that for for the podcast, I was like, really? I mean, fine. Sure, let's do this. But I didn't know exactly why you really were, because I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. I'm also not a very big romantic, oh yay, relationships person. Why am I on a romance podcast?
We need
Because we got
controversy.
high and drunk while playing Mario Kart and convinced you to do it. I don't know why we have to explain this every time.
Every time.
I also really I like reading romance stuff. Anyway, but also as a child, I didn't pay attention to that shit. I'm like, oh, funny. He pushed the ice house into the lake.
He put a fish in his back of his car, and then it got real stinky.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Those are the things you
He hosed
cling
him
to
in
as
the
a
middle
kid.
of winter. That's the shit you pay attention to.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention to the romance and stuff and the dirty things that Pop was saying.
Well, for fuck's sake, I would say that this movie is dirtier and raunchier than half the rom-coms made today.
Oh yeah, and our parents let us watch this when we were kids.
Oh yeah.
Tiny youths under the age or under the height of 3 feet, right? I'm watching this shit.
I remember sitting watching this movie as a kid and laughing at the outtakes with my mom.
Yes.
And now I'm looking back at it and I was like, Mother,
What?
you let me watch that when I was far too young to understand it.
Right,
This was
which makes me go, looking back, why did I think it was funny? Did I just think it was contextually funny
I
because
don't
other
know.
people were laughing?
I don't know.
Or did I just like his delivery? I don't know.
I literally remember this being on during Christmas
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
with
because
all of our family there.
it's a
Mhm.
Christmas movie.
Yeah, it's at very least a classic fall movie.
Yeah, because it
Now-
starts in
November.
November, and they're saying that they have a lot of snow for November.
Right.
And it
And
goes
then-
through Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Mhm.
Yeah, he has his heart attack on Christmas Eve, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So,
This
It's-
movie and Tremors.
Tremors.
I don't know.
What?
okay.
Okay.
I fucking love Tremors, though.
I've never seen it.
For us, the corresponding one that goes with this, because we have several, but the corresponding one, of course, is The Great Outdoors.
Oh,
Oh,
obviously.
fuck
The
yeah, The Great
Outdoors.
Outdoors.
Also, Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck. Dumb and Dumber was, for some reason,
Oh, that was no.
a big family one for us.
My mom and also myself are not Jim Carrey fans.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Fair enough. I love him, but I also understand why you wouldn't.
I'm not upset about the man. I'm just not my humor. Same with Will Ferrell. I'm not my humor.
Fair enough.
Will Ferrell for me is like Melissa McCarthy. He either nails it or it's I will never watch this again.
Except for Will Ferrell, of course, in The Producers, because he fucking nailed that.
Oh,
Nailed
got
the
it
shit out of
down.
that.
Fucking nailed the producers.
Well, like my favorite thing Will Ferrell has done in the last 10 years is Eurovision.
I haven't seen it.
It's worth watching, actually. Moving on, back to this movie. I'm not going to let us get off track.
Yeah, I do want to throw out a couple other just like lines that I wrote down because we're kind of in the like one-liner territory.
Yeah.
This one, it's dumb and I love it, but it's when Max is talking to Chuck and he's like, yeah, he's a regular Don Juan. No wonder the ladies don't want anything to do with you. And then the other Max line that I had to write down this time, because I don't think I've ever caught this before, is when he's talking to the IRS man who's literally in John's house while John is in the hospital, and he says, John Gustafson is straight as a grizzly's dick. Like, what does that mean?
No, my favorite is the reason that's like referenced in the first place is he goes to one of those real kinky clubs, the ones with the male dancers,
yes.
And they
at the beginning of the movie.
His delivery of it is what makes it funny, because he's like, one of those real kinky clubs.
Well, Liz, did you know?
Yes, I know there's a bone in a bear's penis. I know, Danny. God damn it. I hope your dad is proud that you just quoted him.
I mean, always. Your husband will forever and always randomly look at me and go, hey, Danny, did you know that there's a bone in a bear's penis? Yes, I am aware, unfortunately.
Anyway. There's your educational fact, folks.
Yeah.
Well, you said it's straight as a grizzly bear.
As a grizzly's dick.
Yeah.
He says a grizzly's dick to that IRS man.
As straight as a grizzly's dick. Well, I'm sure it is pretty straight. There's a bone in a bear's penis.
Okay. I'm going to divert us away from this because it will keep going. One of my favorite lines, and it's like, there's nothing funny about it. There's nothing funny about the delivery. It's just on point with the Midwest experience, is when they're comparing their catch of the day, and John throws back, well, and I throw back what I'm not going to eat.
It is very much I felt that in the depth of my soul.
I'm just like, God, that's so on point.
Oh, no.
Especially, I come from a very fisherman-y family, and my dad loves to ice fish. I do not.
I have no desire. I've grown up in the cold. I've grown up a lot colder than we are right now, like where we live right now. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to actively sit my ass on a bunch of fucking ice.
Well, no.
I know you're in the shack and like there's a heater and you're on. I get it.
The problem
But I
isn't
wanna
the
do it.
ice. It's the fucking flipped over 5-gallon bucket that you sit on. That's the problem.
I'm not going to lie,
real
though.
sore.
John's ice shack, I was like, oh.
Oh yeah, their ice shacks in this are not like just like little dingy ass things. They got a whole setup going.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
his
they
nice-
set them up at the beginning of winter and they stay up until the end.
Yes. It's just he had a nice chair and stuff to sit in. Like he sat down and I'm like, oh,
He had a
well,
record
hot damn.
player.
I could go in that. I could do that.
Quick point again of mentioning all the little things. The other thing that solidifies the difference between John and Max as far as Ariel is concerned is John is always listening to classical music, which would be very much her thing, and Max is always watching TV and sports and stuff, which there is a whole thing about her gutting her TV to make it a stand for her fishbowl.
Well, I also love that he's not just offended because he's a guy and he doesn't, and like TV's important because you're a guy, right? He's offended because he's like, I was a TV repairman.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my fucking job. He's like, I can fix it for you, but oh man. I also love that he blows dust off the box of chocolates he mixed her, and I was like, so here's the thing. The bare minimum was already on the floor, and you dug a hole.
How old are those chocolates?
It gotta be horrifically just hard as rocks.
Ugh, gross too. Chocolate does go bad.
It does. Well,
Does it?
Yeah.
It does. It's not supposed to have a shelf life of infinity.
Well,
There's milk in it.
yeah, but
It's plant matter. It can mold.
oh well, yeah, I know it can mold, but oh.
Anyway, I think that what it also does a really good job of showing in that moment is like both John and Max have spent a really long time without their significant others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so it really explains why they're so desperate when they find somebody who gives them even a little bit of comfort.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And maybe it just wasn't clear to me, or maybe I didn't pay attention enough. So I know John got divorced, but is she also dead?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't say. That is one of the little like backstory things that I absolutely love is they didn't just have John win and he won, right? Like with May, the first woman that kind of created this feud between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
John, quote unquote, won May from Max. And then he says that she was no prize. He says that she wasn't loyal, so we don't know if she cheated on him or not, but they ended up getting divorced.
Right.
Whereas Max then ended up marrying Amy, and even John was like, you won. You got the better woman, because Amy was a damn good woman, or a damn fine woman.
Yeah. And they're all in agreement in that.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
Like, she was the love of his life.
Yeah.
It also totally makes Max's motivations make a lot of sense. When John's like, do you love her? And he's like, no, but I just want somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's just going into the second one for a brief moment while we're talking about Max's love life. That makes the beginning of the second one like so sad, because there's like a scene where Jacob is being like, Pop, why don't you start dating again? Because Max is kind of like pining over the relationship that John and Ariel have. And Max is just like, all these women, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't like the women in town. And he's like, Jacob, do you remember when your mom made those rhubarb pies for my birthday? Jacob's like, yeah, that's how she found out she was allergic to rhubarb. And Max was like, no, she always knew. She just made it for me anyway because it was my favorite. And he's like, I think about those things all the time. And I was like, oh, Max.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
Yeah.
that just broke my fucking heart.
Oh yeah, you gotta watch the second one, if for no other reason than like Sophia
Loren.
That's okay. I was right. Sophia Loren, is Max Love's love interest, and she's fucking phenomenal. She's so funny. God
And
damn,
hot. That woman is hot.
oh my god, right?
Both, and so is Anne Margaret. Is that who?
Yeah, Anne Margaret. Mhm.
Yeah. Not to diminish these women to their looks, but they picked some fun ass women.
Well, and funny as fuck.
So funny, great acting, great line delivery, just
Timing
so
on
good.
point. Like, and the movie that Anne Margaret is probably best well known for is Bye Bye Birdie. And in that one, they really reduced her to just like this very thin role.
Mm.
Like she's the lead. I don't mean that her time on screen was thin. I mean like her character development is so thin.
Right.
And so it's like seeing her in something like this is like, yes.
Well, and she even has a moment when she and John are like at the top of the hill looking down on the city of Wabasha, and she's like, these moments just really remind me of my late husband. Like she has all of these moments where that she has sadness, but then she like immediately moves past it because she's just like, that's her character, as opposed to them who are kind of the men who are kind of like sitting in it and sitting in like their depression. She's just like, well, I'm still alive, so I'm going to keep moving forward.
She acknowledges the sadness and then moves on.
Well, and I like that her perspective on it is that I am hurt that I lost my husband and it happened in a way that I wasn't prepared to deal with.
Car accident, right, is what she said?
Yeah. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not ready and excited to be with you. And I think in a lot of these stories, it's like, you need to get yourself back out there. And the person in question is like, I literally can't even walk without it hurting. But sure, let me do that.
One thing I did notice about this movie that I really enjoyed. So, because she's kind of going after John, she had her little thing with Chuck. She has her like friendship with Max. There would be the natural inclination, especially in the 90s, to slut shame her, even though there wasn't actually anything romantic going on with her and Max and her and Chuck and everything, you know. But there still would be the natural inclination to do that, and they did not do that here.
They did not.
No.
No, they actually made her seem more like almost ethereal and goddess like, because she just like would like come into people's lives and like magically make them seem so much more vibrant and alive.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
she just had this, well, they call her an angel throughout the entire movie.
Right.
I just really enjoyed that because I was waiting for somebody in a small town
Yeah.
to slut shame her because she's going around with all these guys, blah 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 blah, you know. But she's really not.
Mhm.
Not that it would matter if she was, but she's really not. But I was waiting for somebody to get all uppity,
Right.
No.
and nobody did, and I was really happy about that.
No, they're more just confused by this woman who's like running around doing whatever the hell she wants, and they're like, "What are you doing?
We can't drive a snowmobile at 1:30 in the morning.
Oh my god!"
Can't walk into my house at 1:30 in the morning to stare at my bathroom.
Or
Oh, how
walk
90s.
into my house and just start cooking.
I know, how 90s is it that you can just walk into somebody's house in your
Or how
neighborhood?
small town is it?
Oh yeah, also
Yeah,
that.
that too.
Right? Like nobody locked their doors in our hometown,
Right.
which was a mistake. But you know, you make choices.
I did not grow up in a small town, so we locked our doors.
While we're talking about like the slut shaming thing or the lack thereof, just like the sex life or like the going around with people life, I do love that they talk about safe sex in this movie.
They do.
Yes, they do.
what a random 90s thing.
I love
It's a
that
really
they're-
random 90s thing.
I love that John's like this new age thing where you got to practice safe sex. Well, okay,
I mean,
that
in
was
the
one of
90s,
things,
it was kind of new age.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that Danny and I briefly talked about before you got here. Is like this movie's a fucking time capsule.
It really is.
Like the TV commercials, the products they use, like
oh god, that spray on hair
oh, that's so funny.
infomercial that oh my god, I was like,
the Nutty Professor dance
yep,
commercial. I was just like, God damn, is Nutty Professor really that old?
Yes. The answer
Yes.
is yeah.
And the
Yes,
answer
it
is,
is.
And I'm like, God damn, I wasn't ready for that. Oh man. Also the music choices, like the I'm Too Sexy.
Oh, I know.
oh yeah,
The music choices are really good.
They're really good. And also the score when it's not is like the most 90 sounding.
Uh-huh.
oh it really is. Like it. That was also, I think, probably part of what like dug into my nostalgia heart is the like 90s-ish back score for a rom-com. I was just
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I'm being transported.
Yes.
I don't know, that sad music that they use on every fucking like moment, it hits me every
Yeah.
time. I'm just like, oh, my
Yep.
heart. It
My
remembers.
feelers.
It remembers all of the heartbreak of the 90s.
I think the only movie that has that even more for me is the soundtrack for The Father of the Bride.
Mm.
Like literally, I will have moments in my head where I'll go do 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 do. Like, why is this happening to me? I'm like, this is what an insane person does. Or like, I was joking with my sister once, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna buy a house unless like I look at it and like that sound where the rainbow goes over the house, and he's like, this old Leave It to Beaver house, and I'm like, and it's the perfect house. But anyway, that's another movie we should watch because it holds up, in my opinion.
I watched it not that long ago.
Anyway.
I don't know that I've ever seen that.
It's good. It's good.
Okay. Well, it's on the list now. That's all it takes. That is one that is a classic in my family. Like we watch that all the fucking time. Both part 1 and part 2.
I'm terrible. So my sister-in-law really, really loves While You Were Sleeping.
Mm.
And so she ends up putting it on while we're at Christmas.
Bill Pullman and Sandra Bullock.
I hate While You Were Sleeping.
I don't think I've seen it.
It isn't my favorite. The premise is very 90s rom-com.
Yep.
And so it's not my favorite. I think I've maybe seen it once or twice.
I hate it. I'm like, I'm going to go over here and play solitaire and ignore the fact that this movie is on.
Oh, is this the one where this guy's like in a fucking coma?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
Well,
haven't seen it.
the way it lays out up to that point, and this isn't a spoiler, it's just like you
Yeah.
find out in the first 5 minutes, I think. Like, she works for like
She works
like
for, the
Amtrak or
subway.
something like that, yeah. And I can't remember if she saves him or like she sees that it happens, but she follows him to the hospital. He gets in an accident
she
on the
saves him
Amtrak.
from dying.
Yeah, and he's in a coma this whole time, and she's just like I think it starts off relatively innocent that she's like, I genuinely need to know if this man is okay. But she's also been like obsessing about him, watching him every day while he goes back and forth from work. So, you know.
I think she lies and says she's his fiance
Yes.
so that she can see him in the hospital to
Right.
make sure that
That's
he's okay.
creepy.
And then like she meets his family and they're like these great people. And because she has this miserable life, where she's apparently all alone, because if you're gonna be in a rom-com, your life has to be miserable first, right? And so then she decides to continue to keep up the ruse, all the while falling in love with his brother.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I don't like that movie at all.
it's a movie. Sandra Bullock is rom-com royalty,
Yes, she is.
but it's not my favorite.
Blessed be her name.
Her and Meg Ryan,
I love me
the
some
reigning
Sandy
queens.
Bullock.
So we've talked about the comedy. We've talked about the romance. But we didn't talk about the sad feels.
Oh,
yeah,
do
we
we
have
have
to.
to?
It's one of the. It's like that's what rounds the movie out. Is it's got the
Subplot
romance. It's not. Well, yeah.
for.
So the sad feels, because we didn't talk when we talked about Chuck, is that Chuck passes away.
He does. And they don't necessarily process it in the most healthy
No.
ways.
No.
They try to kill each other a little bit.
bit.
A little
Yeah,
bit.
well.
Like you
Like
do.
you do in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's because we can't process our emotions. in the
We're
Midwest.
emotionally constipated. That's how we roll.
Well, I also like that leading up to this, even though clearly John is frustrated with Max and he's, kind of depressed because he, in his mind, gave up his rights to Ariel, which is a gross way to phrase it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But he finds out that his dad has pulled Max's favorite fishing pole out of the lake, and is going over to see Chuck and tell him, "Look at this! I got this fucking idiot's fishing pole." But you know that eventually, like, he's gonna find a shitty way to do it, but he's going to find a way to give it back to him that also heckles him, and that's just like, it feels like the representation of their friendship a little bit and how it kind of cracks and falls apart, all because there's no way to prepare yourself for when somebody goes. It doesn't matter what age you are, I don't think.
You're never
like, when it's
fully
somebody you're that
prepared.
close to. And there was no reason to suspect that
right.
Chuck was
Well,
unwell.
The concept of death is talked about a lot in this movie because they talk about somebody who died.
They have that whole sequence at the beginning where they're
Right.
talking about like the different ways people went out, and they end with he died in a car accident on impact, and they're like, lucky son of a bitch.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to go out in this like barely there
and they
lingering
do
on
the biggest
kind of way.
foreshadowing thing where John goes, a stroke, you can end up like a vegetable. Give me a cardiac
Yeah.
anytime.
Yep.
And then he ends up having a heart attack at the end of the movie.
Well, and they do this little bait and switch with you where you think, oh no, he died. And you're like, fuck. Because they suddenly switch to them being at a church.
From the hospital.
Yeah.
From the hospital.
Like,
right? Movies have
well,
taught
and
us
on
what
top
that
of it,
means.
when they're at the hospital and Max goes to get Ariel to take her to the hospital to see John, Ariel says one of the heartbreaking things. She's like, my husband died on Easter, and if you die at Christmas, I won't have any holidays left. And she's like, can we just go home? And John just kind of like mumbles and
Falls back asleep.
yeah, and she's like, okay, we'll stay here a little longer. And then it cuts to a church.
Yes. And like in grim looking coats because it is still winter, but it is springish as you kind of realize because you can see grass.
It's
That is a
Midwest
big
spring.
Yeah, it's fall spring
Yeah.
probably. But so they have like long dark coats on, which after a minute you realize that it's just their nice coats,
Right.
because you have church coats. That's a thing in the Midwest.
Yes.
But when they walk in the church, all of a sudden they take off the coats and they're in tuxes, and it's like, oh, you bitches.
Right.
How dare you do that to me?
Yes.
And it's John and Ariel's wedding.
Yes. And I'm like, God damn it.
Also, that was the 90th wedding dress I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, oh no.
I don't know. Gloria's in the second one is very
Oh,
90s
yeah.
as well.
She's got big puffy sleeves, doesn't she?
I think so. Well,
Yeah.
her veil is so big that one of the outtakes is
You can't keep
him
it
like failing to get it.
Of all of the sad moments, though, the one that always catches me and gets me a little teary-eyed is when Max goes to the hospital because Max finds John out in the snow, calls the ambulance, and then he follows him to the hospital and talks to the nurse and says, I have to see John Gustafson. And she's like, family or friend or family. And he just like pauses and has like this big internal moment and is like, his eyes are all teary-eyed and the fucking sad music comes on again. And he's like, friend. I'm just like, that's the moment that gets me every time.
Yeah, it kind of got me too. I'm like, oh, see, you are his friend.
Well, I actually get hit a little bit when John like says to him before he gets to the hospital. He's like, says something along the lines of he's dying and he doesn't want the last thing he sees to be his ugly mug.
Your ugly mug.
And I'm like, that is such like a real friend thing to do, to just be joking and
It's
jive
also
into
kind of
the
metal.
end.
I'm
Just
like, yeah, attaboy.
I want the last thing I see to be your ugly mug. It's like,
I do love, there's this moment, and it's when they're fighting on the ice, which is such a funny scene because they're having a fist fight on the ice because he's just driven John's ice shack with him in it into the water.
Mhm.
And they're having this knockdown drag out fight, which is not working very well because they're on a fucking icy lake, so they just keep falling over before they can actually hit each other.
And they're using literally frozen fish
Right.
as weapons.
But it's Pop comes around the corner and goes, put that fish down. And they are in their 60s, and that puckered his butthole a little bit.
Well, Max just goes, oh, Mr. Gustafson.
He does.
Like, just sends you right back like, oh no,
Mr.
I've
Gustafson,
been here
it was-
before. He's gonna tan my hide.
it was such a funny moment to me. I'm like, yep, that is how you react to someone's father in the Midwest. It's like, oh, nope, we don't do that.
I also love that he's like, kids, you can't live with them. You can't train them.
No, he says you can't shoot him.
You can't shoot them. Sorry, I'm thinking of the syndication dub. Yeah.
You can't live with them. You can't shoot them. And I'm like,
He says the best
Yeah.
fucking shit. Because here's the thing. They are, a lot of them, offensive, especially to modern ears, but they also are things that I could see being said
oh
in
yeah.
our community.
Well, the thing about Pop is, he's supposed to be offensive, like we talked
Yeah.
about.
yeah.
But also, he's who I want to be when I get older. I want to be just so old that I can say whatever the fuck I want, and I will say whatever the fuck I want.
Oh yeah,
And
he
that's
gives
Pop-Pop.
no fucks anymore.
Well, he has literally one of the best lines ever in the second movie when his son, John, says, I really wish you would lay off the bacon, Dad. And he
Yeah.
says, well, you can wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one gets full first. And he claps his hands together.
Oh my gosh! I also love when when before that, what leads to this whole bacon thing is he's explaining. Pop has this whole fucking thing where he's explaining that he smokes cigarettes and he drinks beer and he eats bacon and he's outlived all of the like what he calls the flat stomach motherfucker doctors.
Yeah.
And eventually, John's like, "So what? Is there a moral to the story?" And he's like, "No, I just like that story." God damn it, Pop.
Well, I also love the bit where he's like, life is short. You gotta like live life for the moment. And then he's like, his son starts to agree with him. He's like, yeah, life is short. And he's like, no, life is long. Why do you say life is short? He's like, you said it. He's like, well, it's true. Life is short.
Well, and that's going to be my thing. If I get to be the age that man was, which quite frankly, I kind of hope I don't. But at 94, if somebody's trying to tell me that like I can't eat a certain thing or
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to do a certain thing, I'm going to be like, fuck you, motherfucker. I do
Danny,
what I want.
You have to watch the second movie again. If not for anything other than to refresh your memory of Pop's fate.
Yeah.
Because
It shatters your feelers.
Oh god, literally the saddest moment in either movie.
yeah, for sure.
Also, Pop's whole thing about like the first 60 years, the first 80 years go by. Yeah, go by so quick. It's, eventually, you're like 70, and then it's just you're counting the minutes.
Well, I love that he constantly talks about John and Max like he says something like along the lines of, if I were as young as you, I'd go out there and I'd mount her. Right? And he's just constantly like referencing how they're fucking youths, and it's like, bruh.
When he said mount her, I was like, oh dear Lord, okay.
One of my favorite lines though that he says that's like not raunchy but is funny as fuck. I think it's in the second movie. The granddaughter, I can't think what her name is. I want to say Morgan.
Allie, actually.
Oh, okay, so I was way off. She like swallows a quarter.
Oh yes.
They're freaking out. The parents are like, oh my God, right? And he's like, don't worry about it. If she craps out 2 times in a nickel, then you should be worried. It's like, God damn it. It's so on point with like my experience with men his age. I'm just like, God. Something about that Midwest mentality just changes them. You know, refined isn't our brand.
On the note of Midwest mentality, there's one gripe I have. Is the fact that on Christmas Eve, Melanie and Mike don't show up till 9:00 at night.
Yeah, we don't do that shit.
On Christmas Eve? With that much snow? Your ass ain't out at 9:00 at night.
No.
Unless you're like strolling over from a
maybe. The only thing I could
like across town or something.
My first thought was maybe they were supposed to be at Mike's parents, and then they were just going to come spend the night at John's and then be there for Christmas morning.
Right.
But John thinks that Mike and Melanie aren't together. So, like, what's the story, man?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they are just separated, right? And just because they're separated does not mean that the other grandparents aren't gonna want to see their grandkid. You know, complicated. I think that they get away with it because divorce and separation is complicated and messy.
The other thing you have to consider is it 9:00 at night? Because Minnesota in winter, that could have been 4 p.m. for all we fucking know.
He specifically says 9:00.
Okay.
Yeah. No, if it was just dark, I'd be like, oh shit, look, it's 6:00.
Yeah, I mean, it gets real fucking dark real fucking quick in the winter.
Well, I mean, that's always like the challenge, right? Is you want to stay long enough that you've had a good time or whatever, but like also it's gonna get dark real fast, so I maybe gotta skedaddle.
And you don't know how icy the roads are.
Yeah.
Well, and you won't live close, right? Because she's constantly there.
Right.
They could live in town or just like in the next town over.
Right. Or even just the next big city that's nearby.
Wabasha's a real town, is it? Where the fuck is Wabasha?
Wabasha. That's another one that I love. That the way Matt says it. It's just Wabasha. Honestly, it's really too bad that he did not live for the time of as like audiobooks and voiceover rising in popularity, because I would listen to anything he read to me.
Wabasha is about halfway between Minneapolis, St. Paul region, and La Crosse, Wisconsin, and then also halfway between Rochester and Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually very close to the
Wisconsin. Yeah. Grumpy Old Men saw this like advent of filmmakers coming to Minnesota like nonstop for a while. Like you had obviously this movie, you had the Mighty Ducks. Those two are probably the most popular, but then we also have the Coen brothers who made a fuck ton of movies here. I think even some of Fargo was probably filmed in Minnesota and not in Fargo, right?
Dakota.
Yeah, and so I think the reason that we had that was we had these tax credits for filmmakers to come to Minnesota, and they released those, and so now nobody's gonna come here anymore, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that's a damn shame, because I think Minnesota is a great film area, like in terms of like landscape.
It's gorgeous country.
Gorgeous
well,
landscape,
and depending on where you're filming, you can get a variety of landscape.
Oh, absolutely. Beautiful lakes.
Lakes, lots of trees in the Moore Valley River region, and then if you go to the west, it's farmland.
Well, there's a lot of local talent there too, and so that's the other reason I think they were able to pull it off, is because there's even like if you watch some of the credits and you pay mild attention to them, there is like Minnesota team for half the things, because they're like, yeah, we were able to find local talent.
Well, Drop
to do
Dead
a lot
Gorgeous
of this
is
work.
another great example.
Yes,
and Amy Adams.
That one. That Amy. Yeah. But also, Kirstie Alley, who was awful. But what is her fucking name? Kristen Dunst.
Oh yeah.
Like that was actually that was
You know a
and
lot of
Brittany
Minnesota
Murphy.
facts.
I know a lot of weird shit, and
It's
I
true.
think that's
You know a lot
the
a lot of
source
Minnesota facts for somebody who lives in South Dakota.
But for somebody who went to grad school in Minnesota.
I did go
Oh,
to grad
fair
school in
enough.
Minnesota, and my hometown is just a hop, skip, and a jump over the border. Yeah. I know a lot of weird shit. I also know a lot of weird shit about Dances with Wolves. So the other thing about this movie that I think is really successful and is something that we've bitched about quite a bit on other movies and books is this romanticizes a small town without telling
That's
you
actually
lies.
true.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does not feed you some bullshit about how like everybody's chummy and everybody knows everybody, therefore everybody's like in each other's business, because they are, but not in the sense that they're like in each other's lives. They're people you wave at the drugstore, and then you're like, that bitch, I heard this
Absolutely.
shit.
They really don't sugarcoat any of it either,
No.
because like when they get into the fist fight on the ice, like all of these people who've known them pretty much their entire lives are literally standing in a circle watching them do it.
Yeah, because it's free entertainment,
Yep.
and you're not going
Well,
to
they
get
also
anything
treat
that good
Ariel
for a long time.
correctly, where
Mhm.
like she shows up and she is big news. Everybody knows about her.
Right.
And it's always, oh, do you know who just moved into the whatever house?
Yeah, I can vividly hear in my head examples of friends and family being like, oh yeah, you know the greenhouse over on 2nd Street, right?
Yeah.
So-and-so moved into
Or you'll
there.
name that house based on who lived in it last.
Or
Like,
who lives
oh,
next door.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the one over by
Right,
Smith's? Yeah. My mom literally did that to me today. God damn. It wasn't about a whole house that somebody moved into, but she was talking about an area, and she's like, you know, over by so-and-so. And I'm like, I do.
I do. Yeah. Or like the gal who lived in the house next to us, even though I think I was in high school-ish when she moved out, we still call it her house to this day.
Yeah, we do that. We do that with one of our neighbors too, or we'll constantly. I'm not going to say the name, but you know, that's so and so's house, even though they haven't lived there in like 10 years.
That's
or
how
some
it
shit.
always is.
Yeah, there is a very specific record keeping that's done almost entirely verbally amongst community members who have been there forever.
Oh,
they
for
can
sure.
they can tell you whose kid is whose, who married who,
Uh-huh.
who moved away from town and came back, who is related to this person 5 cousins down, right?
Well, and you
like
kinda
they
see
know
that in this movie
everything
when they start talking about, I think, people who passed away.
Mhm.
So they're like, oh, this person passed away like this, and this person this and this and that. And that's very small town of like, you know everybody. You might not be like kept up with everybody's everything, but if I mention like a name, you'll be like, oh yeah, I know that person.
My grandmother does that to me, and she'll be like, you know, this person. I have never lived in that small town, Grandma. I legit don't know who you're talking about. Oh yeah, you know them. I don't. I don't.
Well, I love too that that conversation is happening with the pharmacist, right?
Right.
And it's like it's very clear that they're not like actually friends with the pharmacist, but like that's just the way that small towns are. Anybody who's willing to listen is how it goes. Like we'll just we'll just shoot the shit about whoever, as long as you're not that person and you're not related to that person, and maybe even if you are.
Important distinction.
Yeah, it depends on how well you like cousin Bob.
Right. Like sometimes it's okay.
Yeah.
You got to be careful who you shit talk to in a small town.
Oh, right. You will start a drama that will last
remember, half
decades.
these people are related.
Right? Like, there's a lot of people who decided they were going to move either back home or move to the Midwest because it was cheaper during COVID and they were working from home, right? Like, they could have New York salary, Midwest living, right?
Right.
And I don't think they were prepared because some of the stories that I've heard, they're like, they were the Ariel of that town and not necessarily in a good way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, that seems like a good wrapper up point, huh?
It does, yeah.
So that means we got to go right into our ratings. So our first rating is typically spice. And while there is no spice in this, there's a lot of raunchiness. So
There is a lot of
I don't know how we want to rate
I think
this.
it's allowed to have.
I'll give it a 2.
A 2.
I was gonna say a 1.
That's high.
I was going to give it a 1 for
1.5
raunchy.
maybe. Just because it's raunchy. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know that he could have gotten away with saying now.
Oh, you
That he-
could have gotten away with it, especially like
It's all about who's delivering it
right.
and
You
how they're
can,
delivering
as an
it.
old man, you can get away with a lot more in that category.
There's just a lot of those jokes. I was like, oh my.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So we'll say 1 point. I'm like at a 1, and you're like,
I'm going with 1.5 just
Okay.
because some of them I was like, oh, hello.
And
Get in the
we
back.
did have the
well,
bathtub.
there is actually a naked scene. You don't see anything, but
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
they don't shy away from being like, these are old bodies, and
Right.
that doesn't mean that they're bad
Yeah.
bodies.
What about the romance?
I thought it was cute. I mean, I've always rooted for them every time
Yeah.
I've watched the movie.
I was also in
I'm
the
going to give it a
3.5
solid
land.
3.5.
I'm going to give it a 3. I do really enjoy that snow angel scene in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's cute. And I love that they actually connect, like you said,
Yeah.
on an intelligence and emotional level, that it's not
Mhm.
just like,
So what's your overall rating?
I give it a 3.
I mean, this is a Wiggles family classic.
It's also a 5 for
so
me.
it's a
As
5.
previously stated, this is literally one of my top 3 movies. And
Love it.
I don't rank a lot of movies because I don't see a lot of them, but I know what my top 3 are, and this is one of them.
I love it. I love it so much.
All right, so that leads us into our recommendations. Ooh, the recommendations.
Mine is solely for the nostalgia factor and the humor, and it's great outdoors.
Classic.
It also a classic, and it has a lot of the same humor.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and it also has that fight, but not necessarily a true fight situation, right? Between, I can't remember their names. I know that Dan Aykroyd's name is Roman, but I can't think of what John
I don't
Candy's name
remember.
is.
Yeah, I can't
I just remember John Candy going, Roman. Yeah, no, that's a good one. It's a good one. Very 90s.
Wiggles?
Oh, me. So, I mean, the obvious choice is, of course, Grumpier Old Men.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, but that's a given. My other choice is going to be Father of the Bride. Part 1 and 2, enjoy. I mean, the best way to watch them is one right after another, if we're being completely honest. Yeah. Another wonderful, amazing duo in that you've got Martin Short and Steve Martin.
Yes.
Comedic power couple right there. And very 90s movie.
I am going to fail. And the reason is because this movie is one of my absolute favorites, to try to recommend something, every time I'm thinking of it, it falls short. So I know that's a cop out, but
No, but I get it. Sometimes if it's I would have a hard time suggesting something against one of my favorite movies too.
yeah. So I do actually have a recommendation because I haven't seen this movie in a long time. It came up on my search and I was like, oh shit, yeah, that movie. And it's Something's Gotta Give.
Okay.
It's a 2000s movie, so it doesn't have the 90s vibes in it, but it's definitely got the bickering and the cuteness. It's just all between two people instead of a buddy comedy thing. But
Another Diane Keaton
is.
movie.
I do love me some Diane Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go with that.
I love it.
Okay.
It's a great ending.
Good choice.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our episode. Want to hit us with the big facts?
Okay, I was like, are you
I
gonna
am
do
not.
it? All right, folks. If you liked this episode, you can find us out on the socials at Wrong Dust Jackets on TikTok and Instagram. Mostly that's where we're hanging out the most. Or you can just find us out on our website at wrongdustjackets.com. Please rate, review. Send us your comments. Send us your feedback. Let us know what you would like us to read and watch. That's all we got then. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.